Introduction: When we learn to let go. There are moments in life when we try so hard to hold on to a broken relationship, a dream that no longer fits, or an outdated version of ourselves, simply because we are afraid. Afraid of loss, of emptiness, of losing control. But the tighter we grip, the more exhausted we become. And the more we fear letting go, the further we drift from peace. Have you ever wondered, what if happiness isn't found in holding on, but in our ability to let go? Letting go isn't failure. It's not giving up. It is a profound act of maturity, knowing what no longer serves the life within us and having the courage to release it. In this video, we'll explore 10 hidden truths about letting go, lessons that can completely transform the way you see yourself and the world. Each part is a doorway to peace, a fresh breeze for a soul weary from carrying too much. And perhaps, in these words, you'll find a reflection of yourself, a version that is lighter, wiser, and more at ease than you ever imagined.
Part 1. Letting go is not losing, it's choosing. We often confuse letting go with giving up, as if releasing something means we've failed, as if walking away means we've lost. But that's not the truth. Letting go is not losing. It's choosing, consciously, quietly, and courageously. There comes a point in every person's life where they must decide, am I holding on out of love, or out of fear? Out of hope, or out of habit? Sometimes, the hardest thing is realizing that the things we once prayed for are no longer right for who we are becoming. You may have been holding on to a job, a relationship, a dream, or even an identity, thinking that if you let go, everything will fall apart. But here's the truth. What falls away when you let go is exactly what no longer belongs. It's not a punishment, it's a clearing. A making space for what's real, what's new, what's next. Letting go is not a moment of weakness. It's a moment of alignment. A sacred turning point when the soul whispers, enough. We are done suffering here. You don't have to hate what you let go of. You don't even need to have closure. Letting go doesn't require bitterness, only honesty. Honesty with yourself about what brings you peace and what keeps you stuck. And when you begin to release the need to control, to fix, to prove, something miraculous happens. You begin to return to yourself. You begin to feel light again. Not because life suddenly becomes perfect, but because you're no longer carrying what isn't yours to hold. In Buddhism, there's a beautiful image of an open hand. The open palm symbolizes non-attachment, not clinging, not resisting, just allowing. Life flows through an open hand. Love flows through it. Grace flows through it. And so does freedom. So if you're in that space right now, somewhere between holding on and letting go, know this, you're not breaking. You are becoming. Letting go doesn't mean the past didn't matter. It means the present matters more. It means you're no longer choosing pain just because it's familiar. You're no longer dimming your light just to make others comfortable. You're no longer shrinking your truth just to fit into a life that no longer fits you. This is your permission slip to choose peace over perfection, to choose growth over guilt, to choose the unknown over the unbearable. Because when you loosen your grip, the right things find you. When you stop chasing what doesn't love you back, you create space for something real to enter. And when your hands are free, life, in all its beauty and wonder, can finally place something new into them. Letting go is not losing. It is the most radical, most compassionate form of choosing. And sometimes, it's the bravest thing we'll ever do. Part 2. Freedom from fear. What if I told you that fear, not failure, not rejection, not even pain, is the real prison most of us live in? We spend so much of our lives trying to avoid what we fear, failing in our careers, losing someone we love, being judged, not being enough. And without realizing it, we start making decisions not from a place of freedom, but from a place of defense. We build walls instead of bridges. We shrink instead of expand. The problem is, the more we try to control the outcome, the tighter we grip onto life. And the tighter we grip, the more anxious, exhausted, and disconnected we feel. Fear is a sneaky master. It disguises itself as ambition, as responsibility, even as love. But beneath it all, it's just a voice whispering, you're not safe. You're not enough. You have to hold on tighter. But here's the paradox. The more we try to control, the more out of control we feel. Letting go, in this case, isn't about recklessness. It's about releasing the illusion of control, about trusting that you don't need to be everything for everyone to be worthy. It's about realizing that fear only rules when we resist it. But when we meet fear with presence, when we look it in the eye and say, "I see you, and I choose to live anyway," something powerful begins to shift. I remember once being so afraid of not being seen, not being successful enough, impressive enough, lovable enough. That fear made me perform my life instead of live it. But the moment I stopped chasing validation and simply allowed myself to be, something cracked open. I found strength in vulnerability. I discovered confidence not from control, but from surrender. There's a Buddhist saying I come back to often: fear is always a call to come home, not to escape. What if every fear you feel isn't a wall, but a doorway? A place where your courage can be born. Letting go of fear doesn't mean it vanishes forever. It means you stop letting it steer the ship. You acknowledge it, thank it for trying to protect you, and gently ask it to sit in the backseat while your true self drives forward. What would your life look like if fear no longer decided your direction? What if your dreams weren't shaped by what you're afraid to lose, but by what you deeply long to become? In the silence that follows letting go, you may hear something you've been missing for a long time. Your own inner voice, steady and kind, saying, "You are already enough. You've always been." And that's when freedom begins, not in the absence of fear, but in your willingness to stop being ruled by it. Part 3. Space for the new. Have you ever tried to add something beautiful to a life that's already too full? Like putting fresh flowers in a vase filled with old water and withered stems. No matter how lovely the new blooms are, there's no space for them to thrive. The same thing happens in our inner world. We hold on so tightly to past relationships, old habits, outdated identities, hoping they'll somehow transform into something better. But in doing so, we block the very growth we are yearning for. We clutter the room of our hearts with things that no longer serve us, and then wonder why joy, love, or peace can't seem to find their way in. Letting go is not just about loss, it's about making room. Think about it. How many of us are still carrying the weight of a friendship that has long turned toxic, or a belief about ourselves that was never really ours to begin with? Maybe it's the story that you're too late, too flawed, or too behind to change. These are the emotional and mental leftovers we keep in storage, just in case. But what if letting go of those things isn't abandoning something, but honoring the fact that you've outgrown it? I once held onto a version of myself that was always agreeable, always accommodating, afraid that if I didn't say yes, I wouldn't be loved. But every time I said yes to someone else, I was quietly saying no to myself. It wasn't until I gently released that role, that identity, that I finally made space for more honest connections, ones that didn't require me to shrink to fit in. When you let go, you create sacred emptiness. Not a void, but an invitation. A space where new people, new ideas, and new experiences can come in, not because you force them to, but because you're finally open to them. There's a quiet wisdom in nature that reflects this truth. Trees shed their leaves without panic. Flowers release their petals without fear. They trust the cycle, that in letting go, new life will come. What if we learned to do the same? Letting go isn't easy. There's grief in it, even when you're releasing something harmful, because it meant something to you once. But here's the secret. You don't need to rush to fill the space right away. Sit in it. Feel the stillness. Trust that the right things, the truer things, will come, not when you demand them, but when you're ready. So I ask you, gently, what are you holding on to that's taking up the space where something beautiful could grow? Letting go may feel like an ending, but often, it's just the clearing before a beginning. And beginnings, the real ones, always need space to breathe. Part 4. The power of the present moment. We spend so much of our lives anywhere but here. We relive past conversations, wondering what we should have said. We rehearse future scenarios, trying to prepare for what might go wrong. We carry regret in one hand, anxiety in the other, and then wonder why the present feels so heavy. But here's the truth. The present moment is the only place where life actually happens. Not in the memory of yesterday. Not in the worry of tomorrow. Right now, this breath, this heartbeat, this quiet moment, is the only real home we have. And yet, it's the home we so often abandon. What keeps us from living here, fully? It's the weight of what we refuse to release. The shame of an old mistake. The grip of an unfulfilled expectation. The hope that the next thing, the next job, the next relationship, the next version of ourselves, will finally bring peace. But peace doesn't live in the next thing. It lives in the now, if we are brave enough to slow down and meet it. Letting go isn't always about releasing people or possessions. Sometimes, it's about letting go of time itself, of clinging to what was or what should be, and stepping gently into what is. I remember once sitting in a park, completely overwhelmed by the noise in my mind. But then, I looked up. The sun was spilling through the leaves. A child nearby was laughing. And for just a moment, everything stilled. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't profound. But it was real. And it reminded me, the present isn't empty. It's full of life, if you pay attention. In Buddhism, mindfulness isn't just a technique. It's a way of honoring the sacredness of this moment. The way your tea warms your hands. The way your breath rises and falls. The way silence wraps around you like a soft blanket. These are not small things. These are everything. When we let go of our obsession with fixing the past or controlling the future, we create space to be alive, truly, vividly alive, right here. And here's the paradox. When we finally show up fully in the present, the past starts to soften. The future starts to feel less frightening. Because you're no longer fragmented. You're whole. Ask yourself, what part of the past are you replaying? What version of the future are you trying to fast forward to? And what are you missing right now, in this moment, because of it? Letting go isn't passive. It's the most courageous thing you can do. It's choosing presence in a world that constantly pulls you away from it. So pause. Breathe. Feel the ground beneath your feet. This moment is not a waiting room for a better life. It is your life. And the more fully you meet it, the more fully it meets you back. Part 5. Impermanence is the truth. Nothing lasts forever, and that's not a warning. It's a gift. Impermanence is one of the most essential truths in Buddhist philosophy, yet it's also one of the hardest to accept. We live in a world that constantly tells us to hold on, to success, to youth, to love, to identity. We are taught to build things that last, to make moments permanent, to fight the passage of time like it's our enemy. But what if we've misunderstood the nature of things? What if the beauty of life doesn't come from permanence, but from the very fact that everything is fleeting? Think about it. A flower is beautiful not because it blooms forever, but because it blooms for now. A sunset takes your breath away because you know it won't last. The laughter of your child, the warmth of a lover's embrace, the feeling of being truly seen, none of it is guaranteed tomorrow. And that's exactly what makes it precious. When we cling to what's fading, we suffer. When we demand that things stay the same, that people never change, that good times never end, we create a constant inner war against reality. But when we embrace impermanence, we learn how to love things more, not less. I remember holding on to a relationship that had clearly run its course. Not because it still brought me joy, but because I feared what it meant to let it go. I was attached to the memory of how things used to be. But the more I clung, the more pain I created, for myself and for them. It wasn't until I accepted that everything changes, that nothing stays fixed, that I could release it with love instead of bitterness. Impermanence isn't a thief. It's a teacher. It reminds us to show up fully, to appreciate deeply, to love fiercely, because we know we won't have this exact moment again. There's a powerful calm that arises when you stop fighting change and begin flowing with it. You start to see endings not as failures, but as transitions. You begin to trust that even loss has something sacred to offer, a doorway to growth, a space for something new to arrive. Ask yourself, what are you trying to freeze in place? What are you resisting, simply because it's changing? And what peace might come if you allowed yourself to ride the current, instead of swimming against it? Letting go is really an act of trusting impermanence. It's saying, I may not know what's next, but I trust that change is not the enemy, it's the rhythm of life itself. When you accept that everything is passing, you begin to live with more reverence. You stop taking things for granted. You start thanking life not for being permanent, but for being present. And in that space, when nothing lasts forever, something extraordinary happens. You find a quiet, unshakable kind of peace, the kind that doesn't depend on things staying the same, but on your willingness to keep your heart open as they change. Part 6. When love is no longer about holding on. We often grow up believing that love means holding on tightly. That if we care deeply enough, we cling. We protect. We fight to keep. But somewhere along the way, many of us discover a deeper truth, that real love has less to do with possession, and more to do with permission. To let someone be. To love them without needing to mold them. To care for them without needing to control them. This is not the love most movies teach us. It's not the dramatic, all-consuming kind of love that confuses obsession for devotion. No, this is a quieter, wiser love, one that knows how to breathe. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let go. Let go of the fantasy version of a relationship. Let go of who you thought someone would become. Let go of the need to be needed. And most tenderly, let go of your own urge to grip love like a lifeline, as if you'll drown without it. I once loved someone so tightly, I forgot to love them freely. I needed them to be a certain way to feel safe. I needed them to respond how I wanted, to stay close, to reassure me. And though I called it love, it was often fear in disguise. Fear of abandonment, fear of change, fear of being alone. But love built on fear always fractures. It cannot breathe under pressure. It wasn't until I stepped back and asked, what if loving someone means letting them be completely themselves, even if that self is growing in a direction I can't follow, that I began to understand what the Buddhists mean when they speak of non-attachment in love. Non-attachment doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care without conditions. It's the difference between saying I love you because you make me feel good, and I love you, even as you change, even if I no longer play the same role in your life. This kind of love is a practice, a muscle, and it begins with how we treat ourselves. Do you allow yourself to be imperfect in your own love? To grow, to change your mind, to release guilt, to let go of the roles you've outgrown? When we stop gripping so tightly, love has a chance to deepen. It becomes less about you complete me and more about you are free, and so am I. There's something profoundly sacred in giving someone the freedom to walk their path, even if it leads them away from you. And if they choose to stay, not out of obligation, but from a place of truth, that's when love becomes extraordinary. So I invite you to ask, what kind of love are you holding on to too tightly? What would it look like to loosen your grip, not to let it slip away, but to let it breathe? When love is no longer about holding on, but about holding space, you might just discover a softness that's stronger than control, and a connection that doesn't demand to be chained to last. It simply is. And in that being, it becomes something timeless. Part 7. Breaking the cycle of pain. Pain has a memory. And if we are not careful, it becomes a pattern. Many of us carry wounds from the past, heartbreaks, betrayals, disappointments, losses. And while we think we've moved on, those unhealed places often continue to shape the way we live, love, and see ourselves. Like echoes, they ripple through our decisions. We become guarded in relationships because of someone who hurt us years ago. We fear failure because of a moment when we weren't enough. We stay in survival mode, even when the danger has long passed. And the truth is, we can't fully step into the future if we are still dragging the emotional weight of yesterday. Letting go is the only way to break the cycle. But here's the tricky part. We often mistake holding on for strength. We believe that remembering the pain protects us. That replaying the story keeps us from repeating it. But in reality, it keeps us trapped in it. I once heard a phrase that stayed with me, what you don't heal, you hand down. And I realized, pain that isn't released quietly becomes the script we live by. And often, it becomes the legacy we pass on. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting what happened. It means choosing not to let it define you anymore. It means you no longer build your identity around your scars. You see them, you honor them, but you stop letting them write your story. That takes courage. Sometimes, more courage than we think we have. Because to break the cycle, you have to feel what you've been avoiding. You have to sit with the sadness. You have to forgive, not just others, but yourself. You have to grieve the version of you who didn't know better, who accepted less, who held on too long. But what waits on the other side of that grief is freedom. When you let go of the story of pain, you make space for a new story. One where you're not the victim, but the healer. Not the one who was broken, but the one who learned how to rebuild. Buddhist wisdom reminds us, suffering is part of life, but suffering over and over is optional. Pain knocks on every door, but whether you keep letting it in is a choice. So, I invite you to ask yourself gently, what patterns are repeating in your life, not because you deserve them, but because you haven't fully released the wound underneath? What story are you still carrying, and are you ready to put it down? This isn't about rushing your healing. It's about realizing you're allowed to stop rehearsing the pain. You're allowed to forgive. You're allowed to let peace in, even if the past didn't offer it. When you break the cycle of pain, you don't just change your own life. You shift something for everyone who comes after you. And that is a quiet revolution. Part 8. Returning to your true self. Somewhere along the road of life, we begin to forget who we really are. Not all at once. It happens slowly. A little compromise here. A little pretending there. We adjust ourselves to fit in, to be accepted, to succeed. We wear the roles expected of us: the good child, the achiever, the helper, the one who always has it together. And over time, our true self gets buried beneath layers we didn't even know we were building. But eventually, something in us begins to ache. Not from failure, but from forgetting. We look in the mirror and wonder, who is this version of me? We feel the quiet discomfort of living a life that doesn't fully feel like our own. That's the soul's way of whispering, come back. You've strayed too far. Letting go, in this context, is the act of peeling back those layers. It's releasing the stories, identities, and expectations that were never really ours. It's about returning, not to who we were as children, but to the self that's always been quietly waiting beneath it all. The Buddhists speak of this as non-self, not that we have no self, but that the self we cling to is often a construction. A bundle of thoughts, roles, fears, and images. Letting go is about seeing through the illusion. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming someone true. I remember a period in my life when I had achieved many of the things I thought would make me feel real: the career, the approval, the image. But I still felt hollow. Not because I wasn't doing enough, but because I was no longer being me. The moments I felt most alive were the ones when I wasn't performing, when I was still, quiet, and honest. That's when I began the journey home. Returning to yourself doesn't require a dramatic change. It starts with small moments of alignment. When you say no when you mean no. When you speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. When you stop performing, even for a moment, and simply exist. Ask yourself, who are you when no one is watching? Who were you before the world told you who to be? What parts of you have been silenced, and are now asking to be heard? Letting go of who you think you're supposed to be makes space for who you really are. And that person, your authentic self, is far more beautiful, more powerful, and more peaceful than any version the world could invent for you. This return isn't always easy. It may cost you approval, familiarity, or comfort. But what you gain is far greater: integrity, clarity, and a deep, unshakable sense of peace. Because when you live in alignment with your true self, you no longer have to chase happiness. You are happiness. Not in a loud, performative way, but in the quiet certainty of knowing that you are finally home. And sometimes, coming home to yourself is the most radical act of healing there is. Part 9. When gratitude begins to bloom. There's a quiet shift that happens when we let go of what we thought we needed. At first, it feels like emptiness. Like something has been taken away. A dream, a belief, a version of the future we clung to. But if we stay with that space long enough, something new begins to grow there. Gratitude. Not the kind of gratitude that comes from things going our way, or from checking off milestones, but a deeper kind. One that rises from within, uninvited and unforced. Like a wildflower blooming through cracks in the pavement. We start to notice the small things again: the way sunlight filters through leaves, the warmth of a morning cup of tea, the laughter of a child across the street. These details, once drowned out by the noise of wanting more, suddenly feel like little miracles. It's strange, isn't it? That when we stop grasping so tightly, we begin to see how much we already have. That the ordinary is actually extraordinary, when we are finally present enough to see it. In Buddhist teaching, this is the gift of mindfulness, to be awake to the moment, without needing it to be different. Gratitude, then, is not something we force. It's something we receive, when we are no longer distracted by comparison, competition, or craving. I once met an old monk who told me something I'll never forget. He said, "The happiest people are not the ones who get everything they want. They're the ones who recognize how precious everything already is." That changed me. It made me realize how many beautiful moments I had overlooked, not because they weren't there, but because I wasn't. I was always reaching for the next thing, the next improvement, the next version of myself. Gratitude can't grow in that soil. It grows in presence, in stillness, in surrender. When we let go of expectations, resentment, perfection, we make space for gratitude to bloom. And gratitude, once it arrives, softens everything. It changes the way we see people. It dissolves judgment. It turns what we have into enough. You don't have to wait for your life to be perfect to feel grateful. You don't need all the answers, all the success, or all the healing. You just need to pause, to breathe, and to look, really look, at the gift of this moment. Gratitude is not a result of life going well. It's a way of life that makes everything feel well, even when it's not. So today, take a moment. Not to wish for more, but to thank life for what is. And if you feel even a flicker of peace in that moment, that's the beginning of something sacred. That's the bloom of gratitude, and the return of joy. Part 10. The peace that follows acceptance. Sometimes, peace doesn't arrive like a lightning bolt. It comes slowly, almost silently, like a gentle fog rolling in after a long, loud storm. And often, that peace is born the moment we stop resisting and start accepting. Acceptance is not defeat. It's not giving up. It's not resigning ourselves to sadness or settling for less. Acceptance is something far more powerful. It's the quiet courage to say, "This is how things are, and I will meet them with grace." In a world obsessed with control, with fixing, with always striving to be better or have more, acceptance feels almost rebellious. It asks us to stop fighting life, to stop trying to bend every outcome to our will. It invites us to soften, not collapse, to open, not run, to be with what is, not just what we want. There's a deep teaching in Buddhism that says, suffering is what happens when we want reality to be different from what it is. Let that sink in. Most of our pain doesn't come from what happened. It comes from our resistance to it, from our need to change it, to erase it, to rewrite it. But when we finally allow life to unfold as it is, without protest, without judgment, something shifts. We begin to experience a peace that's not dependent on conditions, a peace that just is. I remember a time in my life when everything felt uncertain. Plans had unraveled. People had left. Dreams had broken apart in my hands. I tried to hold it all together, tried to force the puzzle pieces into place. But nothing worked, until one day I stopped trying. I sat quietly with the mess. I allowed the grief, the confusion, the silence. And in that stillness, I discovered something unexpected. Peace. It didn't come because things got better. It came because I stopped demanding that they had to. Acceptance, I realized, wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning of my return to wholeness. The beginning of living not in fear, not in resistance, but in alignment, with life, with truth, with what is. Letting go, in the end, isn't about losing. It's about coming home. To yourself. To this moment. To the deep, abiding truth that everything is unfolding just as it needs to, and that you are not broken, not behind, not too late. You are exactly where you're meant to be. And when that truth lands in your heart, not just as a concept, but as a lived experience, you will know the kind of peace no one can take from you. That's the hidden gift of letting go. Not a perfect life, but a peaceful one.